Hi everyone, it's Don from the London Vapor today. It's a real beautiful day, so I figured I would waste it inside doing a video. Actually, honestly, I wish I was outside right now, but I've been promising everyone that history of video, and I finally have some free time to do it. So I hope while everyone else is enjoying the nice bright sun and big fat clouds today, they also enjoy this video because it's taken a lot of effort to do. Alright, so what we're going to do is I'm going to run through some history of video. That's what it is today. Got my notes here. And the reason why I'm doing this is because a lot of people have some confusion on vaping. You know, this and this. People will say rumors. Big Tobacco will say rumors. Even the CDC, where they recently quoted vaping products as tobacco products. Now, see, here's the thing. Tobacco products are things that contain tobacco. Tobacco contains nicotine. If you don't have tobacco but you have nicotine, it becomes a nicotine product, which is what this is. You can also get them in no nicotine, which I don't know how something that doesn't contain something can be something like that. So what my hopes are is by running through the history of tobacco, we can better understand what tobacco is. It gives you a rough idea of, the history from when it was first cultivated to modern day to use. It's not going to be very descriptive. I mean, I'm only one person doing this video, so please keep that in mind. But hopefully, after this video, it will give everyone a rough idea on what to go on for when we do the history of modern day vaping. So without further ado, I bring you the long anticipated and constantly requested, and when I say requested, I mean mainly by myself, because I've really been wanting to get this done. Actually, it's the whole reason I started this channel. History of tobacco video. So I'm going to read off the list. I'll give you some visuals, probably up in this corner, which is going to be the long edited part. Please leave a like and a subscribe, hopefully, comment, anything to help with the videos, because all is greatly appreciated. Unless you're going to be trolling. If you're going to troll, there's a bridge somewhere else you can go hide under. All right, so to start things off, the tobacco species name is Nicotiana tabacum. I did not know that. And it is also a close relative to the poison nightshade. But here's another thing. It is also a close relative to a few other things, which you might know. For example, we have potatoes, paprika, tomato, eggplant, mandrake root, and petunias. That I did not know. It's a fairly interesting concept that something we put into our bodies can also is related to something that can be hazardous to us. I mean, to be fair, tobacco is hazardous to us, but not really potatoes. I mean, if you eat a lot of them, or you turn it into vodka. Moving on, tobacco was first found in the Americas, so that's this region up here, not this region where other smokable things are. Everyone knows what I mean. In 1492, Columbus, that's this guy right here, was greeted by Native Americans who gave him gifts of fruit, food, and other things. Among those gifts was dried leaves of tobacco. Now that's an interesting thing because the natives had been actually cultivating tobacco for thousands of years and using it as medicine or rituals. I mean, stereotypical native, we've all heard, we've heard the stories, right? But in all honesty, they actually used it for honest-to-God reasons that fit into their culture. So that's a very interesting key point. Tobacco is also not edible and has a distinct smell. I've never actually smelt tobacco. I mean, unless it's in a cigarette. I am a recovered smoker. So that's why I picked up vaping. But I've never actually smelled fresh stuff. Native Americans have been smoking tobacco for almost 2 millennia. You think, when you think history, you think a couple... Sorry about that. Had to get the door. Anywho, so when you think history of things, you know, something that's been around, is around right now, it's very hard to imagine that it's been around for longer. Now, when it says natives have been smoking tobacco for 2 millennia, it's also, you got to keep in mind that's a different process. You know, they weren't going down to the local corner store, the reserve, and buying bags of cigarettes. They would, the process was different, and the tobacco itself was different. Humankind is very good at manipulating things to our own ends. So tobacco nowadays is not the same as tobacco was 2 million years ago. So keeping that in mind, we will move on. Tobacco was used by natives for medicine and religious purposes. I had mentioned that earlier. So yeah, so what they would generally do is they'd use it to treat small wounds. As far as I know, remember, this is going off of what I've been able to collect on the internet. But religious purposes, I didn't research that one, so forgive me. I will have to get back to you on that one. Hopefully by the time the video is added in, I'll have a picture over my face or something. Anyways, Columbus threw away the gift, later realizing its value. Typical white man is given a gift by someone who's not white and throws it away because he thinks it's trash. How many times have we heard that story? Well, sounds like a joke. Tobacco history can go back as far as 6,000 BC. Tobacco is older than Christ himself. That's pretty interesting. And of course, yes, there's probably going to be an atheist going, "Oh, Christ isn't real." Just save it, all right? That's not what this video is about. Rodrigo Jerez and Luis Torres were the first to observe smoking of the plant. Now, Rodrigo de Jerez was actually a crewman for Columbus, and Luis de Torres was his interpreter. So we're still actually on the bulk of Columbus information. But here's an interesting thing. Jerez was arrested by the Holy Inquisition when he brought back smoking tobacco and used it in his village. Everyone was so scared that only the devil could teach a man to breathe smoke from his nose and his mouth. You gotta remember, things were very religious back then, so imagine if you got you pluck someone out of, like, well, then, and you showed them modern day vaping, they'd think you were the devil. So, he was in prison for 7 years because of his neighbors. But the funny part was, by the time he was released, it had become popular. People were starting to grow it, people were starting to smoke it, people were starting to sell it. It really caught on within 7 years. That's the funny part, because there's another plant that's being smoked by people today, and they're getting arrested, and now it's legal in most places. I mean, here in Canada, we can do it if you want, but you know, that's beside the point. Vaping channel, but thought I'd throw that in there. All right, next page. In the 15th century, sailors were planting tobacco around all their posts used for gifts and selling use. I really need to work on my writing. Anyway, so you gotta imagine, you know, these guys just sailing from port to port, right? And there's so many places that weren't cultivated. So they would plant these plants for their own personal use because they've realized that the value in it. People were starting to smoke it. People were wanting it. Well, there's no suppliers, right? It wasn't until they started commercially growing it in Brazil, which we'll come up to later in the video. So really, if you had the seeds, you had the time, you had the manpower, you could grow them, whether they're small crops or large crops, and then make a profit off of it, because the market wasn't really wasn't really a market. It was just a pastime that people were starting to pick up. So you got to remember, you know, Jerez, was it Jerez or Torres? Yeah, Jerez, sorry. Jerez was thrown in prison for this by the Holy Inquisition. By the mid-15th century, tobacco was commercially grown in Brazil, like I just said. So what commercially grown means is basically you go out, you take a Sunday drive anywhere outside of your city, you're going to see crops. That's commercially grown product. Unless it's being used for the farmer's own needs, but generally most crops are commercially grown. So that's what it means, is they cleared land, planted the seeds, and then had workers take care of it, and then harvested and sold it. It was soon sought after across Europe and America. So that means around the 15th century was when, you know, we started picking up on it. You know, it wasn't just an aboriginal thing that tribes were using for medicine or brain fart. Okay. Wasn't just used for rituals anymore. People were actually, you know, smoking it. So that's, you know, Canada, what is now Canada, America, South America, Europe, United Kingdom, Germany, all those places. It's fairly interesting how quickly it picked up. By the end of the 16th century, tobacco was in almost every European country. That's within almost 100 years. Everywhere that had white people, almost, was using tobacco. That wasn't a racist thing. That was just pointing out that a lot of European. Anyways, tobacco was snorted or smoked. Now that's an interesting thing. I bet you never knew that people would crush up tobacco and do that. Whenever you think of snorting, you think of a mirror, credit card, and some white powder. Well, there's actually a history behind that with tobacco. And I will get to that later. If I do not, I will mention it later at the wrong time. Alright, so doctors claim tobacco to be medicinal. Now this is when I said medicinal, I mean, you know, European doctors, you know, the guys that would give you lead to cure a stubbed toe. These doctors didn't really know what they were doing. I'm not talking about, you know, native tribes, because they'd been using it medicinally for a long time. In 1571, a doctor by the name of Nicholas Monardes wrote a book containing 36 sicknesses tobacco should cure. I did not actually get the list of those because, oddly enough, I couldn't find the book. That was even stooping low as using Wikipedia, which most of these are not actually from Wikipedia. So I would suggest looking that up. The guy's name and picture will probably be up here, just if anyone's interested in looking into that. All right, moving on. During the Revolution in America, tobacco gains a foothold. Now, tobacco was popular. People were looking after it, wanting it. But it wasn't really, you know, what it is today. It was more of like, what's a good example? I guess tobacco then was like vaping. We didn't become a full-blown thing until it got its foot in the door with the Revolution, which is actually interesting because in 1776, tobacco was used as collateral for loans from France for the American Revolution. I bet you did not know that tobacco was valuable enough that they could trade that for something else of monetary value to fuel the war, which just really sounds like something America's been doing for years. Anyways, in 1847, company Philip Morris is established in the UK. Now, hopefully all of you who smoke will understand that Philip Morris is a smoke brand, and it's actually still around today. They, if I remember correctly, I was reading an article where they actually had started producing a disposable vape line of cigarettes. You know, the little battery pack ones, you can get them at the convenience stores or whatever. But packs of them instead of nicotine, so that actual smokers, instead of having to go out and buy something big and bulky like this, you could go out to the store, spend, I don't know what the price is, but let's say it's an average pack price, and you could buy that instead of a pack of cigarettes. And it's actually, as far as I know, still going on in the UK. Haven't seen it here in Canada, and I haven't heard anything about it from America, but as far as I know, it's still in America. Don't quote me on it. Philip Morris, first to sell hand-rolled cigarettes. And that's actually fairly interesting because in a few more mentions, you will find out about the first rolling machine, which is actually a fairly interesting concept. In 1849, an U.S. company by the name of J.E. Liggett and Brother in St. Louis starts selling smokes. So now there are two brand companies that are actually developing the market. So from this point on, the market actually becomes bigger and bigger. It isn't until later on that it actually gets more dangerous towards smoking. But carrying on, in 1880, a man named James Bonsack creates the first cigarette rolling machine. Before that, they were actually getting people to roll them themselves, packing them up and selling them. It wasn't until Bonsack actually created a machine, and that's this one right here, before people weren't needed. You just put the tobacco in, you put whatever other products in, and the machine did it itself. He went into business to create the American Tobacco Company, or ATC for short, which is actually still around today. Don't have very much information on that, but they do have a lot of revenue. For example, ATC is still around today and is a global company with a reported revenue of $104 billion in 2015. Now let's think about that. They made $104 billion making cigarettes that kill people, all right? Cigarettes kill people. We know this. We know all the chemicals. Like there's 43 that cause cancer, and we know about this. There is, let's see here. One, two, three, four ingredients in this, which one is addictive. But you can get it in zero. You can control the amount you smoke with this, right? But you can't with cigarettes. Each cigarette is a different amount. All it is packed into the same shape. So, really, I don't understand how people can say that vaping is more hazardous. Just food for thought. During the First and Second World War, now this is where it gets interesting, tobacco reaches all-time high in popularity. And the reason how they did that was because millions of smoke packs were sent to troops on the front lines. This created hundreds of thousands of addicts, addicted people in the process. So if you think about it, there were millions of lives lost, thousands of soldiers. Like, I could quantify it by looking up the research, but we all know what the world wars were like, and they were bloody, they were disturbing. We've all seen the films, and they don't even do it justice. So think about it. You're in a traumatized place, fighting for your life, and you get hooked on something that makes you feel a little bit better. It's able to take the edge off, and that's cigarettes. And then the war ends. You're hooked on cigarettes. What do? Like any addict, you look for your fix. So those people start smoking. And the more people start smoking. And this, in my opinion, is what has caused the tremendous issue with modern smoking. It is because people were given cigarettes then. No, don't get me wrong. I mean, the wars aren't something to joke about. It's just really a point I'm trying to make. But if you think about it, if things were different and they wouldn't have sent those cigarettes, things may have been different. Just another thing to think about. All right. Smokes were even included in troop rations. Forgot to mention that. My apologies. In 1920, companies started heavily advertising women smoking. Now, here's the thing. Before that, smoking had a long history of being, for the aristocrats, the rich people, the popular. It wasn't for women. It was a man's smoke. It was a man's product, whether it be snorted or smoked. So the companies took until 1920 to realize, hey, we could be making more money if women smoked too. We, as a species, are not always that great at obvious things. But, it was a different time and a different place. So, I guess they get a free pass. But, I mean, if they would have been doing this back in the 1700s, probably would have been making more money. By 1935, in the U.S., female smoking standards tripled. That means within 15 years, the amount of people smoking had tripled. So that's a fairly large amount because, I know the amounts of people smoking, the amount of people in America was a lot lower then, especially with the war going on, but still, it's a pretty big jump because America still had a lot of people in it, in the large cities. So, in the early 17th century, however, a Chinese philosopher named Feng Yizai, which I am horrible with saying, so please don't get angry with me that I just butchered that, had described the dangers of smoking, noting it caused scorched lung. Now, this is going to be a little bit of an area where we talk about the hazards and the simple fact that it has been around for years. I'm not talking decades, literally just mentioned the 17th century. They were able to notice something was off with this thing, but we still used it. Another man, Sir Francis Bacon, yes, that is a real name. His name is Bacon. I've looked multiple places to make sure that was his real name, and yes, it is his real name. People get mad that police are called piggies. Imagine actually having the last name Bacon. Moving on, so Bacon pointed out that it has the practice of smoking is actually hard to quit. So he's able to notice that certain qualities of it are addictive. It's once you start, it's hard to stop. In Great Britain, let's see here. Back then, people knew nothing of nicotine, and that tobacco didn't contain it. They did not know that. Now, here's the fun part about snuff. That's what snorting tobacco is called. So, in Great Britain, snuff users were warned about nose cancer in the early 1960s, and as early as 1761. I really should start a brain fart counter, maybe like down here or something. Some funny music every time Anyways. Snuff is a form of tobacco used where users crush dried tobacco into a fine powder and ingest it up the sinuses for a quick and strong sensation, which was actually outlawed in churches by the Pope because he thought it was a, a sin. Let's just say it was one of the sins. The feeling was too sinful. Popes have done weird things like getting rid of the penises on marble statues. I think that was Pope Francis the Third or something. I know it was a pope, though. That's actually where the concept of olive leaves comes from, believe it or not. Back onto vaping. Smoking. Oh, God. Okay. In 1795, German doctors started warning pipe smokers about lip cancer. So, they connected pipe smoking to lip cancer. They connected snuff users to nose cancer. Some Chinese philosopher connected it to lung cancer, scorched lungs. And a guy named after a food noticed it was addictive. In 1930, American doctors started to connect tobacco use with lung cancer. The evidence has always been there. But it's sad to say that, you know, back then, even though they had connected it to lung cancer, that doctors were still promoting it. You know, there were quacks. There's probably still quacks out there today who still say there's nothing wrong with nicotine. But problem is that anything, tobacco, nicotine, booze, all that stuff is addictive, and all of it has downsides that we have seen for years, and people still push it. But the benefit is the reason it's not as bad today, and you know, you got those little pictures on the smoke packs that everyone just forgets are there because they're so desensitized to it, and there's no point to putting them there, is because it's regulated today. You know, it's moderated by like the FDA or whatever health organization a country uses. But the reason for that is because they lost lawsuits. People were losing their lives, dying of cancer, anything. I mean, you could just look up any of the lawsuits, and these companies were losing. They're promoting something that kills instead of promoting a healthy alternative. And even today, like you'll get see in the next video, the history of vaping, that companies were shaming vaping. But in reality, vaping is a lot like, what's that medicine that drug addicts use? It's a little, you can get it from, it's orange, and crack addicts will use it to try and get off the drug. Now, see, the thing is, that's pretty much what vaping is. It's an addictive substance, but that's not as bad as another addictive substance, but it's controlled to help you get off of a worse addictive substance. So smoking will give you cancer. Smoking will kill you. Hands down, we have enough research, we have enough proof that smoking will kill you. But we also have proof that vaping, in the short term, and soon to be the long term, it will happen, that this is a better alternative. I would rather have this than smoke a cigarette any day. Anyways, moving on. I'll save the rest of my rant for another time when I actually have you here for a rant. Tobacco ads are now severely limited, so you won't see doctors promoting tobacco anymore. And in fact, when was the last time you saw a tobacco ad for smoking? I think I saw a Camel one once on YouTube. I've seen more condom Trojan commercials than I've seen tobacco commercials, and I don't really understand why they give me all the condom commercials, probably because I'm 25, but anyways, still, despite all this, all the evidence that smoking kills, that smoking harms you, they still make billions of dollars. And if you think none of that money is going towards defacing vaping, you are wrong. That'll be another video. But it is estimated that there are over 1 billion people who are addicted to smoking worldwide. And you got to think about that statistically. They can only estimate that because you've got impoverished countries where they can't exactly go in and do surveys. Now, that's just off of the numbers of, you know, like China, Japan, America, Russia, Canada, the UK. You still got countries like Africa or even places in Europe where people who are poor smoke. It's a cheap and easy addiction. But that is all I have for the video, and I almost made the 30-minute mark. So I hope you all enjoy it. I hope this video has been educational, and I would ask that you please give me a like and a subscribe. Also, if you want to check out a good vape store, like I mentioned in every video, the London Vapes shop here in London, Ontario, over on Oxford, is the place to go. The friendly staff, great products, good at answering questions. If you are interested in starting up vaping, or you want a new place where you can feel at home, that's the shop for you. So without further ado, I thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great day. Get outside. I know I'm going to be. Take care.